Okay, shall we start? Yes. Good evening. Now, this is the lecture 2 of our geography section. Now, coming to our first and foremost one, the first and foremost one, it is the revision of our last class. Now, which all things we have discussed in our last class? Online, good evening. Good evening, Sunita, good evening. Yes, yes. The Kalki, good evening. Yes, yes. Okay. Okay, Alva. Yes, the major one, the first one is our revision of our last class. Now, in our last class, we have discussed about two important aspects. Which is the two important aspects we have discussed? One we call it as our introduction towards our geography, and the second one we call it as what? Second one we call it as our strategy session. Yes or no? Now, as a part of our introduction, we have discussed about what is geography. We have discussed this. Now, geography is a term which has been taken up from Elinda. It has been taken up from Greek. The word has been derived from the Greek. Now, what does geo means? Geo means earth, and the second one, graphy, means what? The graphy means we call it as study. Be cautious here. It is the geography and the word. It has been taken up from a Greek word which majorly includes the earth, and the second one we call it as a study. Yes or no? This we have discussed. And the second one, with respect to while discussing about this one, we have also discussed about the theme one also. The theme one is related to what? The theme one is related to concept of the earth. We'll see all those things one by one. This is our first one. And the second one, while discussing about our strategy, we have discussed about three important aspects here. Online, I hope it is clear. We have discussed about the three important aspects. Now, what are the things we have discussed with respect to? It is the strategy. We have discussed about geography. Andrenu, nothing but what is geography? How do you know? The second one we call it as why we need to study. Geography na yenik study ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನೋಡೋದಿ. And the third one we call it as how to study this subject. We have discussed this. Now, what we have discussed majorly from the three important aspects. One we call it as our physical geography. The second one we call it as human, and the third one we call it as what? The economic part. We have discussed. And the second one we call it as why. Now, why we need to study geography? Majorly with respect to what? The marks, we have seen this. And how to study, we have discussed majorly based on our blueprinting also. Yes or no? Now, after all these things, we have started with respect to what? We have started with respect to the major one, we call it as, it is the chapter 1 we have started. Yes or no? Now, under chapter 1, how many themes do we need to study here? Now, how many themes? Now, we need to study three important themes. Now, which is that three important themes? First. Now, I have already said three important themes. Now, one we call it as the theme one, which majorly talks about what? The basic concepts of the earth. The basic concept of earth ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ. And ಎರಡನೇ theme ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ, we have discussed about which theme? We have discussed about the second theme, we call it as the imaginary line. Now, imaginary line anna discuss ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ, the most important one, for sure there will be a question on latitudes as well as longitudes ಬಗ್ಗೆ. Question ಪಕ್ಕ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. Now, ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ discuss ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ, we will be discussing about ಯಾವ್ದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ? The first one we call it as horizontal lines which is placed on it is earth ಬಗ್ಗೆ, that we call it as what? The latitudes. And the second one we call it as what? The longitudes. Idra ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನೋಡೋಣ. Latitude ಅಂದ್ರೇನು, longitude ಅಂದ್ರೇನು, and I'll give you the blueprint also. Now, based on that blueprint, we'll be filling all the concepts. Second one. The third theme we call it as the motions. Now, in a simpler manner, motions means ಏನು? Motions ಅಂದ್ರೇನು? The movement. Now, the movement can be ಯಾವ ತರ ಇರಬಹುದು? The movement can be of two types. One can be, we call it as on its axis. The movement on its axis, and the second one we call it as, which is revolving around the sun. Now this on its axis and the rotation and the, and this we call it as revolution. This is our majorly our three blueprints. Now under this three important blueprints we have discussed about online. I hope it is clear. Now this we have discussed about our blueprint. Now what is the blueprint we have discussed here? Now first one we call it as, it is introduction or definition about Earth. The second one we have discussed about, which one? The salient features. While discussing about salient features ಬಗ್ಗೆ discuss ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ what should be our subparameters? Now subparameters we call it as the shape. What is the shape of the Earth? The shape of the Earth we call it as oblate spheroid ಅಂತ ಕರೀತೀವಿ. Oblate, the spheroid, or it is also called as what? Or it is also called as geoid shape. Yes or no? Geoid shape, first one, yes. And the second one, what is the density? Now Earth has higher density and it is present within our solar system, or we call it as inner planets. We'll be discussing this, or we have already discussed. And the third part we call it as, rotation. Now how our Earth rotates? Is it west to east or east to west? Now westರಿಂದ east move ಆಗ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದನ್ನ we call it as what? The rotation part. We have seen this. ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಕೊನೆಯದಾಗಿ ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ the last one we call it as the uniqueness part. The uniqueness we call it as what? The uniqueness we call it as, majorly it is called as blue planet. It is called as Goldilocks zone. Goldilocks zone ಅಂದ್ರೆ where there is an existence of what? Life. And water exists in what form? Water exists in liquid form. Nothing but climate is what? Climate is moderate. Yes or no? This is about the first one, or it is the revision of about our last class. Now coming to this session, we will be discussing about what? We will be discussing about the aspect called as, which aspect? It has major aspect we call it as, the next one we call it as the theme 2. Now what is this theme 2 talks about? Now theme 2 talks about the imaginary lines. Now do we have a line above our Earth? It is nothing that this is about our Earth. Now do we have the lines above the Earth? Online fast. Above the Earth, or it's just an imaginary line? It's an imaginary line. Now sir, now think that if I want to locate this place, how can I locate? It is, can I say that northeast? Now if I want to locate a place called as North America, now can I say that it is northwest? Northwest ಇದೆ ಅಂತ, ಅಥವಾ central ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ಲೋ central ಇದೆ ನೋಡಿ ಅಂತ. Or if it is south, can I say it is south ಇದೆ ಅಂತ? Or for the identification of a particular location, don't you think we want a specific, we call it as the imaginary line should be plotted above the surface of the Earth? Yes or no? Yes or no? It is the Earth is completely blank. Be cautious here. Earth is completely blank. Now if I want to locate a place called as India, now how to locate? Now how can I say that India is present in iday latitude alli ide anta? How can I say? Now don't you think for the study about a particular geography, study about a particular location about the Earth, now don't you think we need to add some lines called as the horizontal lines and the vertical lines? Yes or no? It is, I need to add in the horizontal lines add ಮಾಡಲೇಬೇಕು. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ I need to add the vertical lines also. Now if I want to locate a place in, we call it as, if I want to locate a place called as India ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೋಣ. Now can I say that at this latitude, at this longitude anta? Yes or no? Nothing that it is, now I want to locate Bangalore, or I want to locate Indore, because Indore is considered to be the cleanest city, or I want to locate Delhi, or I want to locate Mumbai. Now how to locate? Can I say that random agi ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹುಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗು ಅಂತ, ಇಲ್ಲ GPS ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗು ಅಂತ? Now for the identification of particular location about the earth. Now how to do it? Now adukoskara, what is the basic requirement of that? Basic requirement for studying about a particular location. Exactly, Pradeep, exactly, yes. It is India plus 82.5. We'll see all the things one by one, but just the brief ideas. Now if I want to locate a particular place, if we want to locate, we call it as a particular place above the surface of the earth. How can we do it? Now to study that, we want an aspect called as, we want a prerequisite. Now sir, what purpose? For what purpose? Now to study about a particular location, or for the establishment of GPS. What do you mean by GPS? It is the global positioning system, or we call it as the geographical representation of a particular technology. It requires a two important prerequisite. Now what is that two important prerequisite? Beke beku sir. Now we want both the horizontal lines and other jotege we want what? The vertical lines also. Now sir, now horizontal lines anna enanta karitivi. The horizontal lines, it is nenpitkolli. Now if I am adding it is putting a single line. Now can we say that ಗೆರೆ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಿದೀವಾ ಉಗ್ರಂ ತರ? Or is it just it is a visual one? Or is it just an imaginary one? ಏನ್ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ ನಿಮಗೆ? It is just an imaginary. Again, ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ I said that it is imaginary, the lines. Now imaginary lines ಅಲ್ಲಿ it is divided it into two things. One we call it as what? One we call it as, it is horizontal line, the line, and the second one we call it as what? The vertical lines. One horizontal anta karitivi, and the second one we call it as what? The vertical line. Now ಈ ಒಂದು horizontal line anna ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ಸರ್ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, this horizontal line we call it as what? We call it as latitude. We call it as what? We call it as latitude. And ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ, if I am adding a line vertical, we call it as what? We call it as longitude. Be cautious here. Be cautious. I'll be giving you a blueprint. Just understand the basic concept now. Now it is the complete earth is blank. The complete earth is blank. And the second one, now why we need to go for horizontal and vertical? Because to understand the particular location about the surface of the earth. Yes or no? Now understand now. Now think that it is I'm adding, it is the different, we call it as vertical lines, or we call it as horizontal lines. Now can I say that here comes India, here comes South America, here comes North America, here comes Europe, here comes we call it as Africa, here comes it is Australia? Yes or no? It is where both the latitudes as well as longitudes meet adaga, we will be getting a particular location. And for that purpose, majorly to pinpoint exactly. Now can I pinpoint the exact location of Grace IS? Now if I want to pinpoint the location of Grace IS in Bangalore, now what is the prerequisite I need to have? What is prerequisite? Begin. What is prerequisite? It is prerequisite here is the horizontal lines and vertical lines. Now both this horizontal and vertical lines are just what? Imaginary in nature. Majorly to benefit, it is the pinpointing of the location. Majorly to pinpoint the location. Yes or no? This we call it as our first part. This we call it as the first part of inatagiriti. The first part of we call it as, it is majorly though, it is imaginary lines. Now sir, if I want to discuss about imaginary lines, what should be the blueprint? What should be the, understand my question here, what should be the blueprint to study about the horizontal line called as latitude and the vertical lines called as longitude? Long agidre longitude, it is adda idre anta karitivi latitudes. Yes or no? This is our first one. Now sir, if I want to study about both latitudes as well as longitude, now what should be the blueprint antandre? Already I have said we need to discuss about only the three important things here. The three important things. The first thing we call it as what? The first thing we call it as the introduction or definition. Now while discussing about the introduction part, we will be discussing about what is the definition of latitude. What is the definition of latitude? And the second one we will be discussing about, it is also called as, this latitude is also called as, longitudes is also called as, will be studying as a part of an introduction. Yes or no? This is the first one. And the second major important one, it is second one we call it as the salient features, and the last one we call it as uniqueness. Now sir, while studying about salient features and study marbekadre, we will be studying about the most again the sub blueprints. Sir, we'll be discussing about the sub blueprints andre. Majorly we call it as, first we will be discussing about how many number of latitudes are present, how many number of longitudes are present anta nodthivi first. Now how many latitudes and how many longitudes with respect to Earth? How many? We'll see that as the first one. And the second one we call it as, what is the length of different latitudes and what is the different length? It is udda eshtiде anta. The different length of what? Latitudes as well as longitudes. Yes or no? Second one we need to discuss. And the third one we call it as, what is the gap between two latitudes? What is the gap between two longitudes? Andre, what is the width eshtiದೆ? ಎರಡು ಲಾಂಗಿಟ್ಯೂಡ್ಗಳ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ವಿಡ್ತ್ ಇದೆ and ಎರಡು ಲ್ಯಾಟಿಟ್ಯೂಡ್ಗಳ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ವಿಡ್ತ್ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ we'll be discussing under where? Under we call it as the width part. Hope you are getting it. The third one and the last one we call it as, we will be discussing about the most important latitudes and the most important longitudes. Now if you are aware with respect to this blueprint, done with the game. It is the most important. Now what is Tropic of Capricorn, Tropic of Cancer? Now can we see hundreds and hundreds of latitudes? Can we remember that? Agatta? No. Can we remember all the longitudes? Not possible, boss. But adukoskara we'll be remembering what? Only and only the most important latitudes and the most important longitudes we will be studying here. Exactly, yes. Exactly, yes. We'll see this. These are majorly one. And the last one we call it as, in case if there is any uniqueness. Sir, what is that uniqueness, sir? Andre? Now, which is the most important? The latitudes which passes via India. Now, for this we want atlas. It is not an issue. This class or the second class is an excuse, but for sure next class at least bring an atlas, because you can experience where is India, it is from which all states it passes. We'll see all the things one by one. Okay, Alva. Now first remember this. First one we call it as, we need to know about definition. Second one we call it as, this latitude is also called as, longitude is also called as. And next one, how many in number, what is the length, what is the width, the most important which passes through India. Okay, Alva. The first one coming to it is first important aspect. The first important aspect, now give a heading called as, what is the first one? It is latitude. The first one we call it as latitude. Under our imaginary line, we call it as the latitudes. Yes, online Sheila, exactly, yes, Prabal, exactly. Yes, Pradeep, exactly, okay. We'll see all the things one by one. Yes, one hour already studied, it will be just as a revision class. 1 hour freshers, automatically it will be a foundation class, or it's a conceptual building class. Okay, Alva. Now under our latitudes, now I've already said, it is there are three important things. Now first one, understand our first part called as introduction. Now what is the introduction first one now? Now I've already said, I've said that this is about our Earth. Now what is Earth? Now can I say it is horizontal lines which are plotted, it is the parallel to what? The parallel to equator. Now can I say this one, this is a line, can I say it's in latitude? Now what is latitude? It's an horizontal line. Now if a horizontal line, if it is plotted, it is exactly at the center. Don't you think this we call it as equator? What does equator means? It's a latitude which divides equally, which divides Earth into what? The two equal halves. Yes or no? It is the two equal halves. We call it as equator. Now what is this one? It's an horizontal line. Now is it a physical horizontal line or it's just an imaginary line? It's just an imaginary line. This imaginary line, if it is dividing, what is dividing? If it is dividing the Earth into two equal halves. Now it is the one which is present above to the equator. We call it as what? We call it as northern hemisphere. Idina northern hemisphere anta karitivi, and below to equator we call it as what? Southern, because equator nodadadre it is present to the south. We call it as idina enta karitivi? Southern hemisphere, and the region if it is present to the north of equator, we call it as what? Northern hemisphere. We call it as northern hemisphere. Okay na? Yes or no? Now sir, now if this is fine, now can I plot different latitudes on this? Yes or no? This we call it as what? This we call it as what? It is, can I say, we call it as latitudes. Now, or else can I also say that it is parallels of equator? This is also called as the parallels of equator. Now exactly equator line again. All these are parallel. All these are parallel. Now this is fine, sir. Now how many different latitudes can I plot in the northern hemisphere? How many can I plot in the southern hemisphere? How many? If this is 0 degree, understand now? Understand? Okay. Now think that this is our Earth. This is our Earth. Now this is our 0 degree. This is our 0 degree. Now can I say this is 90? This is, we call it as 90 degrees. Now if it is present in northern hemisphere, the 90 degree north, and if it is present in southern hemisphere, we call it as what? 90 degrees south. Now think that I am adding different latitudes. It is 1 degree, 2 degree, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, up till what? 90. Now how many latitudes can I add here? 90. Now in the same manner, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up till what? 90. Now if that is the case, how many latitudes, how many number of latitudes are present above the surface of Earth? Above. It is 181 alva. How? Equator. Second one. Now what is the length? Length is nothing but udda eshtiದೆ ಅಂತ latitude. Now is all the latitudes have the same length or different length? If it is different length, where can you see it is maximum length of latitude? Equator. Yes or done with the game. Now where can you see? Where can you see it is the smallest length of the latitude? This one. Say this. Yes or done. Now all these are fine, sir. All these are fine. It is nothing but 90 plus 90 plus 1. Now total number we call it as, now total number of latitudes is 181. Nothing but 90 from the north, 90 from the south. It is one equator, we call it as what? Yes. And the second one, and the second major important one, now which is the longest latitude? It is longest latitude, we call it as equator. Now which has a distance of ಎಷ್ಟು sir andre 111 kilometers. Approximately we are talking about the 111 kilometers, whereas near to poles ಎಷ್ಟಿದೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ we call it as what? 106. Now we don't want this exact numbers, but can I say that it is smallest and it is largest? Whereas in this region we call it as what? Moderate. Yes or no? Yes, we'll discuss and again, just keep on understanding this. Does the number is it clear? Second one with respect to length. Second one with respect to length, which one has the highest? Or which one has the, we call it as the longest one, equator, and the smallest one we call it as near to poles. Okay, Alva. Now, what is the distance between the two latitudes? Will it remain same or will it be different? Online fast? It is same. Now, how same? How can you say that it's same? Because it is parallels. And the second one, now 0 and the 1 again, same distance, 1 to 2 is same distance, alva. If that is the case, the difference between two latitudes will be what? The same, or the distance remains same. Yes or no, boss? Okay, alva. It is, understand, keep on understanding this. It is, I'll just summarize now. Now this was about our Earth. Now first one I have said that it's an imaginary line which has been plotted above the surface of the Earth. Now the largest one we call it as equator. Now this equator divides the Earth into two equal halves. One we call it as northern hemisphere above the, or towards the north of equator we call it as what? Northern hemisphere by Virveco. It is one that is present towards the south we call it as what? Southern hemisphere. And the second one we call it as how much or the how many number of latitudes can I add? Chaukasi vada, can I add half a degree? Half degree, no. It is, we need to take at least a basic 1 degree as a, it is the criteria. Now 1 and it is 1 till 90, it is 90. And 1 till 90 we call it as what? Again 90 plus 1 what? 181. Number clear? And the second one, what is the length of the imaginary line? It is length of latitudes. It is maximum at equator, whereas minimum at where? Minimum at poles. Yes, these are done. Now the next one, sir, what is the kilometers in the other? I said 111 kilometers, whereas this we call it as what? 106. And the next one is okay, sir. Don't you think the distance remains same? The distance remains same. Yes or no? Now understand this. Distance remains same. Sir, all these are fine. All these are the fine now with respect to we call it as, it is which is the important one. Now can we remember all the 181 the latitudes? Is it a possibility? Can we remember all under? It's not a possibility. It is impossible to remember. Now for that our geographers have it is classified some important latitudes. Out of this 181, it is, they have said that it is some should be remembered as the most important one. Sir, which is that most important one? The first one is what? The first one is equator itself. The first one we call it as equator. Now can I say equator as 0 degree? Now from now on can I say 0? Second one. Now second one we call it as, second most important latitude we call it as which one? The 23.5 degrees. North or south? North. Now I will discuss why it is 23.5. Chaukat we could have taken it as 23 or 24. Why exactly 23.5? Online, one who are experts. Yes. Why only 23.5? 23 ವರೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ಯಾಕೆ? Why half? Why ಚೌಕಾಸಿ? Yes or no? Now in the same manner, if it is north andre, we should also take it in the south also. This we call it as what? Yes, 23 and a half. Now the next one we call it as, the 66 and a half. Now I am using different terminologies so that you should never get confused. Now in the both the we call it the hemispheres, we have 66 and a half, 66 and a half. Now how to remember now? Now adukoskara. Now if it is present in the north, we call it as 66 and a half north. If it is present in southern hemisphere, we call it as what? 66 and a half south. Now my question here is, can we every time say that 23 and a half, 66 and a half? Don't you think it gets irritated or it takes time? Oh, there you go. Now again, what to do this? How to make it simple, or how to make it a simpler version of this? It is latitudes. It is renaming them. Now rename madbekili. Now how to rename it? Now how to rename it? Anyways, we are done with this. Now what is this? We call it as 90 degrees south, 90 degrees we call it as north. Online fast. Why? Yes. Okay, huh? Now why we need to rename antandre? Majorly for a simplification. Now the 0 degree, we name it as what? 0 degree, we have renamed it as equator. Why we have renamed it as equator? Why we are calling this as equator? Because this is the imaginary line which has been plotted in what manner? Horizontal manner, which divides the earth into two exactly or two equal halves. It is equator. We call it as equator. Now, ade riti, how to rename all those things? How to rename? Now, this 23 and a half, it is called as what? The Tropic of Cancer. The Tropic of Cancer. And in the same manner, the southern part, we call it as Tropic of what? Capricorn. Again, this has been named by the expert geographies. Tropic of Capricorn. Now, we can't exactly say that 23 of south, north, anta. But adukoskara we have renamed it as Cancer and Capricorn. In the same manner, 66 and a half north is called as what? Now, the 66 and a half, it passes through a sea called as Arctic. And adukoskara, we name this line as what sea? Arctic, we call it as, based on we call it as Arctic Sea, and the latitude we call it as Arctic line anta, athwa Arctic circle anta karitivi. Yes or no? Now sir, why circle? Second I need to discuss. One we need to call as, why 23 and a half, why 66 and a half? First one I'll discuss. Second one, why in the circular manner? Second. And the third one we call it as the 66 and a half south, which passes through which ocean or which sea? It is Antarctica. Adukoskara, this circle we call it as what circle? Antarctic circle. We call it as Antarctic circle anta karitivi. Okay na, artha agtidya? We call it as Antarctic circle. Now the last one, 90 south we call it as the South Pole, whereas 90 north we call it as what? North Pole. Yes or no? This we call it as, it is South Pole, South the pole, and this we call it as what? North Pole. Okay now, this is majorly about our, exactly the Bail, exactly study, exactly Pradeep, yes. Okay, no. This is majorly we call it as, it is renaming of the most important latitudes. Now we need to remember only and only, it is this latitudes which majorly includes our 0, 20 and a half we call it Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, Arctic Circle, Antarctic Circle, the South Pole, and we call it as what? North Pole. Yes or no? Now sir, the next major important one here is, now why are we calling? Now why are we calling, or why are we? It is providing 23 and a half. Why not 23? Why not 24? Why? This is the first question we need to know. And the second one, why this is called as circle? Now is it Earth, is it in a flat shape or is it in a circular manner? Yav tara ide idu? It is Earth is in the form of, I have already said, Earth in the form of what? Earth in the form of the circle. Or we call it as, what is the shape of the Earth? We call it as geoid. We call it as geoid. It is also called as what? It is also called as oblate the spheroid anta karitivi. Oblate spheroid. Yes or no? It is called as oblate spheroid, and it is also called as the shape of the Earth. We call it as geoid in nature. Yes or no? This we have discussed. It is not a flat shape, rather it is in what manner? It is geoid shape or in a circular fashion, and adukoskara our Arctic circle as well as our Antarctic circle, it is named after what? The circle. Because it is circular in fashion, and that is the reason we call it as Arctic, Antarctic. Now Arctic, what is the latitude angle? What is the latitude degree? 66 and a half, north or south? It is north, perfect. Now what about Antarctic? 66 and a half, it is south. Yes or no? 66 and a half, the south. We have seen this. Now sir, why 23 and a half? Now is our Earth exactly in straight manner, or is it tilted? Now if it is tilted, now is it tilted towards the east or is it tilted towards the west? Now if it is east, it is tilted by what degrees? It is tilted by what degrees? First, it is tilted by, it is what degrees to the east? First, what degrees to the east? Now if this is our original angle, our Earth is tilted by, it is how many degrees? It is, our Earth is tilted by the 23 and a half east. So we'll see how this has tilted. Now what is the reason? We'll see all the things. Now this was our original one, but now our Earth is tilted towards, it is towards the east, by how much degrees? It is 23 and a half. Is it towards the east? Is it towards the west? East. Now this is our, now if it is this will be our equator. Hope you are getting it. Equator. Now this will be what? 23 and a half, 66 and a half, 23 and a half, 66 and a half. Yes or no? In reality, our Earth is tilted towards what direction? It is 23 east ಗೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಪೂರ್ವಕ್ಕೆ ಬೆಂಡ್ ಆಗಿದೆ, or tilted towards ಯಾವ ಕಡೆಗೆ? East. Now what degrees? 23 and a half. Now if it is 23 and a half, now out of 90 degree, if it is tilted by 23 and a half, what is the remaining angle? 66 and a half. Not 67, it is 66 and a half. Okay, Allah. Now, based on this, our geographers have said that let's go for this important angles. Because why? Because our Earth is tilted by what angle? Our Earth is tilted by 23 and a half towards the east. Sir, my question here is, ಈ Earth ಗೆ ಏನು ಕೆಲಸ ಇಲ್ವಾ? Why it has tilted? Now, Don't you think the earth does not have any work? Why it is tilted toward the east? Why? Now, the earth has not taken a decision, rather, now this earth is being impacted by, the earth is being impacted by an asteroid called as, what asteroid? The Theia. The asteroid called as, it is Theia, got impacted. Now we got to think that I am standing in a, it is exact straight line. Now someone slaps me or someone beats me. Now will I be stagnant or will I take a, it has some tilt. Some tilt to hoti bhi. Now even the same thing which has happened with respect to the earth also. Earth kuda tilt agide. Now yav kade tilt agide sir andre, the tilt which has happened with respect to which direction? It is towards the east. Now that tilt angle we call it as, what? The 23.5. Highly remember this. The angle of tilt we call it as 23.5, and the rest one. Now from this our next one or the next degree we call it as 66.5. Now sir, if that is the case, why are you discussing in a straight line? But can't I teach in this way every time? Itara yield 0 baratte 23. But earth in reality it is tilted. But from now on, I won't tilt this, rather it is I will tilt the image itself. Now I will be writing in what direction? In a circular fashion. This is tilted one, and this is our equator. This is our what? The Tropic of Cancer, the Arctic Circle, Capricorn. We call it as Antarctic Circle, South Pole, North Pole. Now understand this. Which one looks easier? Is it this or is it this? And that is the reason. Another reason in reality exists in this form. It is tilted towards what direction? Tilted towards eastern direction. Whereas for our convenience, it is plotting in what manner? It is exactly in a straight manner. And this we call it as what? This we call it as the axis. Now earth tilts in what manner? Exactly, yes. Exactly, we call it as, the tilts or the rotates in what manner? West to east. And second one I have already said, it is flattened at the uppoles, whereas it is bulged at where? The center. It is bulged at center. If that is the case, where can you experience higher area? It is at equator, and that is the reason where can you experience higher amount of, we call it as higher amount or the higher length of the latitude. Hope you are getting it. Yes or no? Yes, it is. This is majorly we call it as latitudes, and the most important latitudes also we have discussed. Now with respect to the last one, we call it as, now which is the most important? Now where exactly is India? Is it in northern position, southern, or is it in we call it as eastern or western? Now where is India? Now this is our equator. Now this we call it as a longitude. Now this longitude divides earth into western, and this we call it as what? Eastern. Whereas this we call it as what? Northern. This we call it as the southern. Yes or no? This we call it as southern. This we call it as southern part. Now where is India? Is it in northeast or southeast, the southwest or northwest? Now it is India, it is present in where? India, not only India, it is majority part of, we call it as majority part of Asia. Majority part of Asia comes under where? Majority part of Asia comes under where? Northeast. Now here it is India. Now exactly exactly 23 and a half. The 23 and a half exactly divides India into the two equal halves. Now it is 23 and a half. Is it north or south? North. It is exactly 23 and a half north. It is also called as what? The Tropic of the Cancer or Capricorn? The Cancer. The Tropic of Cancer, which exactly divides India into the two equal halves. Whereas this Tropic of Cancer which passes through, we'll see how many states it passes. Now majorly it passes through 8 important states. Majorly, which includes, we'll see one by one, it includes Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, majorly the Bhopal region, majorly which includes Chhattisgarh, majorly we call it as, it is West Bengal, the Tripura, as well as we call it as Mizoram. We'll see all the things, based on our map, not with respect to mugging up. We'll see one by one based on our concepts. Okay, Alva. Now, can we discuss one by one? Yes. The first one. The first, exactly online. Yes, it passes through 8 important states. The Tropic of the Cancer and the Karitivi. Okay, Alva. Now, sir, we'll discuss one by one. Yes, the complete one clear. Now, shall we fill all the blueprints now? Now, blueprints in mind now. Now, first one heading called as, which one? It is introduction. The first main heading, have you given the latitudes? Okay. The first one we call it as introduction. The first one we call it as introduction. Now while discussing about introduction, we need to know about what? The definition. Now, what is the definition of latitudes? Now, can I say exactly? Now, first one, can I say it's an imaginary line? It's an imaginary line. It's an imaginary line which has been plotted. Where it has been plotted? Imaginary line which has been plotted on the where? Surface of the earth. Surface of the earth in what manner? Horizontal laga or vertical laga? Horizontally. It is, we call it as, in what manner? It is horizontal laga. In horizontal manner, we call it as what? We call it as latitudes. Yes or no? We call it as latitudes. First one. Second one, something speciality about, or it is also called as, now this latitudes. Don't you think this latitudes are also being plotted in what manner? It is plotted in what manner? It is parallels to equator. Yes or no? It is the parallels of equator. It is plotted in what manner? Parallels to equator. Parallels to equator. And that is the reason thus latitudes are also called as parallels of latitude. It is called as parallels of latitude. Highly important one. They have already asked the question in your examination. We call it as, it is parallels. Parallels of what? Latitude. Parallels of latitude. The first one clear? Yes or no? First one. The second one. Now what is the second one? The salient features. Online, I hope you guys are getting yeses. Okay. Now the second major important one, the salient features. Under this salient features, what is the first one we need to know? It is first one we call it as number of latitudes. Estappa? Yellow button desto. Nive. How much? Nive. It is pretty ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ತಾನೆ. Now what is the number of latitudes? How much number? It is 181. 181. Now how 181? 90. Okay na, ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. 90 plus 1 plus 90. I want organization also. I don't want random. ನಂಗೆ 181 ಬೇಡ ನನಗೆ. I want 90. 1 plus 90. Now what is this 90? 90 ಅಂದ್ರೆ evening ಅದು. It is 90 is nothing but the northern hemisphere ಅಲ್ಲಿ we have 90 and the second one we call it as ಏನಿಸ್ ದಡ್ರಿದಿರಲ್ಲ ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಲ್ವಾ? Okay. It is 90 we call it as southern hemisphere and the last one we call it as what? It is equator. Okay alva? Yes. This we call it what is total number here now. Now total number ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ 181 in number. Yes or no? Yes. This is our first one. Now the second major important one. Now what is the length of the latitude? What is the length? Now is the length of different latitudes, is it same or is it different? It is first one, the length of the latitudes are different. The length of the latitudes are different. Now if it is different andre, now we need to know about the longest one and we need to know about the shortest one also alva. Yes or no? Now which one is the longest? It is equator. Which one is the smallest? Being the pattern angalbeku. It is which one is the longest one? Which one is the smallest? Now longest one we call it as equator. What is the length of equator? 311. It has approximately, yaru measure madilla, it is just the 311 kilometers. Okay alva? The 311 we call it as the kilometers and the next one, yes, the next one we call it as the smallest one. Where is smallest one? The poles. What is the distance? Okay now, 106. And the third major important one. Now what is the distance between two latitudes? Now is it same or is it different? It is same. Now same idre how many kilometers are approximately andre? The same. It is same. Now what is same andre? It is 311 kilometers. Or the third one we call it as distance. The distance between two latitudes. The distance between the two latitudes is same. Length same. Length same. No. How can it be same? It is horizontal. Horizontal andre one kade it will be what? One kade it will be. So this, how can it be same, boss? Now length ನೋಡಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇದೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಏನಾಗ್ತದೆ? The small. But what about distance? Ready? Same. Distance between two latitudes is what? Distance between two latitudes is it same or different? It is same. Distance between two latitudes are the same. Now what is the distance? It is 311 kilometers. 311 dot kilometers. Yes. On an exactly yes. It is same. Perfect. And the last one we call it as, can we remember all the 181, the number of latitudes? Now don't you think for our convenience we need to remember only the important things? Now which is that most important one? Which is that most important one? Most important yadu? Most important one we call it as first. It is 0 degree called as equator. And second one, why 23.5? Why? It is earth is tilted towards which direction? It is towards the east. Now with how much degrees? Yes or no? Now 23 and a half, it is north. That 23 and a half what? It is south. Now 23 and a half north anna in the we call it as the Tropic of Cancer. Tropic of Cancer. And 23 and a half south anna we call it as what? Tropic of the Capricorn. The Tropic of Capricorn. Yes or no? The next one we call it as, next one we call it as what? It is the 66 and a half the south and the 66 and a half what? The north. Now 66 and a half north we call it as the Arctic or Antarctic. Arctic. We call it as Arctic. Arctic anta karitivi. Why it is called as Arctic Circle? Because it passes through Arctic Circle. It passes through Arctic Circle. Okay na? See, nange ellaru artha agbeku nange it is obru ibru artha ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಲ್ಲ. I want 100% accuracy. ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ? Yes, done. It is questions ಕೇಳಿದಾಗ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಹೇಳಬೇಕು. Okay, it's for your goodness alva. I'm not targeting here, but you should know all the things. Concentration ಮಾಡಲಿ ಅಂತ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. It is Arctic is 66.5 ಅಂತ ಎಂದು ಕರಿತೀವಿ. It is we call it as the Antarctic one. We call it as Antarctic. And the last one, the last important one, we call it as 90 degrees south. And the second one we call it as what? 90 degrees north. Now 90 degrees south we call it as, the 90 degrees south we call it as what? We call it as in the karitivi. It is we call it as it is the South Pole. We call it as South Pole, and whereas 90 degrees north we call it as what? The North Pole. Yes or no? It is highly chillness. Highly chillness we can observe where? It is highly chillness we can observe. It is, we call it as highly chillness we can observe. Majorly with respect to we call it as southern as well as the northern hemisphere. Okay na? Or we call it as southern or south pole as well as north pole. Clear? Done. This is majorly we call it as, this is majorly our blueprinting part. One is our introduction we have discussed. Now introduction we call it as the imaginary, which is the surface or which is plotted on the surface in horizontal manner, which is parallel to what? Parallel to equator, and this we call it as the parallels of latitudes. The parallels of latitudes, first one. And the second one we call it as the salient features. Only you need to remember the 4 pointers. One we call it as how many number? 181, 90 plus 1 plus 90. And the second one we call it as length, different, highest and lowest, highest at equator, lowest at the poles. And the third one we call it as distance, it is same, 311. And the most important latitudes we call it as, the most important latitudes ಬೇಕು sir ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, it is you can also add here the image add ಮಾಡಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಈಗ now fast ಬರೀ ಪಟ್ಟಂತ ಏನ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರೀಬೇಕು, which is the first one? It is equator. First one we call it as equator. The first one we call it as the equator, and equator divides it into 2 equal hemispheres. One we call it as northern, and the second one we call it as what? The southern hemisphere. Now northern hemisphere is divided it into 3 important the latitudes. The 3 important latitudes, which is that 3 important latitudes. It is that 23, now 66, 90. Okay now 23 and a half, the 66 and a half, 90 degrees north. Now within we call it as Tropic of Cancer, Arctic Circle, we call it as what? 90s we call it as North Pole. North, the pole. Okay alva? Yes or no? Online fast. Okay. The next one, equator. Again this is we call it as to the south, we call it as South Pole. So again, South Pole is divided it into the three equal important one. One we call it as the 23.5, the 66.5. It is 66.5 and 90 degrees north. Sorry, 90 degrees the south. The 90 degrees south. Now this 22.5 south we call it as what? Begne. The Tropic of Capricorn. And the 66.5 we call it as what? Antarctic Circle. And the last one 90 south we call it as the South Pole. We call it as the South, the Pole. Yes or no? Yes. This is about our major important one. And the last one, the last left part we call it as what? It is last left part we call it as, which is that most important latitude which passes through India or which passes via India. Does equator passes via India? Does Tropic of Cancer passes via India? Cancer, the Capricorn, Arctic, Antarctic, the North, the South? No. It is only one, the most important latitude which passes here is what? It is Tropic of Cancer. Now, Tropic of Cancer, which exactly divides India into what? The two equal halves. The two equal halves, yes or no? Now, the last one we call it as, which one? The Tropic of Cancer. Yes or no? Doubt illa tane? Okay. No keyboard for this? Okay. Okay. Now see this map. Now this we call it as India. Yes or no? Now this one we call it as the India. Okay. Now this major one we call it as India. Now via India, the most important we call it as the most important. I said a line which passes through. Now which is that latitude which passes through India? Which is that? It is the latitude which passes through India. It is Tropic of Cancer. I have already said the Tropic of Cancer which divides India it into what? India it into two equal halves. Now which is that two equal halves? Now towards the north of this Tropic of Cancer we call it as what? It is North India. The North India, whereas which are present to the south of this Tropic of Cancer we call it as South India. Now sir, this is fine sir. Now this Tropic of Cancer passes through how many states? This passes through how many states? How many landlocked states? How many coastal states? Now, what do you mean by coastal and what do you mean by landlocked states? First, what do you mean by the coastal and what do you mean by landlocked states? Now, coastal means, perfect, which has an access to what? Which has an access to water body. Which has an access to water body, we call it as coastal states. And the second one, how many states or what do you mean by landlocked state? The landlocked state. Now what is landlocked? It is which does not have an access to the ocean or it does not have access to the water body. There is no ports. Nothing but all the sites are covered by what? Land. And that region we call it as landlocked. Now coastal access illa antandre aa ondu state galannu enanta kariತೀವಿ? We call it as landlocked. Whereas coastal access idre ನಮ್ಮ ports ಆಗಿರಬಹುದು ಬಂದರುಗಳನ್ನು ಎಸ್ಟಾಬ್ಲಿಷ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಆ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಗಳನ್ನು ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? We call it as coastal states. Yes or no? Now we'll see all the things one by one. We'll see all the things one by one. But now we'll see, now this Tropic of Cancer passes through how many states? Observe this. It is how many antandre? We call it as 8 states. In the examination they can ask you from it is west to east or from east to west. Now if it is west to east, this is called geography. It is majorly mapping. Now sir, with respect to our west to east, which is the first state via this Tropic of Cancer passes through? It is first one we call it as Gujarat. Now what is the capital of Gujarat? It is Gandhinagar. Gujarat's capital we call it as Gandhinagar. Gujarat's capital we call it as Gandhinagar. Gandhinagar. Already they have asked the question with respect to this. How many coastal and how many it is states which passes through the Tropic of Cancer is landlocked. They have asked the question in CDS examination 2024. They have asked the question in UPSC CDS 2024 already question ಕೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. And the different states they have asked the question in various examinations. Again, which has been conducted by UPSC as well as the state examinations, they have asked the questions. First is we call it as Gujarat. Now Gujarat's capital we call it as what? It is Gandhinagar. Gujarat's capital we call it as Gandhinagar. And the second one we call it as, second state we call it as what? If you can observe, it passes through Rajasthan. ನಿಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತಿದ್ರೆ it passes through what? It passes through, we call it as majorly. Which one? It is majorly we call it as, it passes through Rajasthan. Observe clearly. Which also passes through Rajasthan. The first one is Gujarat and the second one is what? Rajasthan. Now what is the capital of Rajasthan? It is Jaipur. It is Jaipur is the, it is capital of Rajasthan, Jaipur, the Rajasthan's capital. And the third one we call it as what? It is Madhya Pradesh. What is the capital of Madhya Pradesh? Bhopal. The Madhya Pradesh capital we call it as the Bhopal. It's not Indore, rather we call it as Bhopal is the, it is we call it as Bhopal, we call it as, it is the capital of Madhya Pradesh. The fourth one we call it as the Chhattisgarh. The fourth one, observe, you should observe and you should write. Okay, alva? It is, we call it as the Chhattisgarh. Now what is the capital of Chhattisgarh? It is, we call it as the Raipur or Ranchina. It is Raipur. The Raipur is the capital of, we call it as Chhattisgarh. Capital of Chhattisgarh we call it as Raipur. Okay now, this is the Raipur. And the fifth one we call it as the Jharkhand. Jharkhand's capital Ranchi. Jharkhand's capital yadappa andre Ranchi. Followed by this we have West Bengal. West Bengal. West Bengal. Mamta Didi capital yadu. It is, we call it as, it is majorly Kolkata. The Kolkata is the capital of, we call it as West Bengal. The West Bengal is considered to be the capital of, we call it as what? Capital of, we call it as West Bengal. Capital of West Bengal. Yes or no? West Bengal. Adadmele we call it as Tripura and Mizoram. Now Tripura's capital Agartala. The Tripura's capital we call it as Agartala. The Tripura's capital we call it as Agartala. It is Agartala. Now what is the Mizoram's capital? It is, we call it as Aizawl. It is, we call it as Aizawl. Okay alva? Total eshtayitu nodi. It is total eshtayitu andre, we call it as what? We call it as the 8 states. Majorly we call it as 8 states. 8 states. Yes or no? It is 8 the states. 8. This has been taken up from NCERT. Now this is from our NCERTs. This is 11th standard NCERT. Now what is, I can say, I have already said, first is we call it Gujarat. Second one, observe Rajasthan. The third one we call it as what? Madhya Pradesh. The Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand. You should organize the content also. Remember fast. One is, now can we go from east to west? East to west. It is Mizoram, Tripura, West Bengal, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan. It is Gujarat. From middle to east, it is, how come Madhya Pradesh? It is Chhattisgarh. Now Chhattisgarh or Jharkhand. Now after Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, West Bengal, it is Tripura and Mizoram. From it is center to the west, it is Jharkhand, followed by the Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Gujarat. Okay, Alva, you should be ready. Now last question here is, now out of this, now how many states? 8. Now out of this 8 states, how many states have a coastal access? Coastal access. Yadu. It is Gujarat, West Bengal, andre. Now how 4? It is 2. Yes or no? It is, we call it as, now how many? Now first one we call it as, it is Gujarat as well as only West Bengal as what access? The coastal access. Now coastal access is 2. Now coastal access is 2. And can I say rest is landlocked? Yes or no? See, coastal access illa ante nothing but landlocked anta tane. Yes or no? If a particular state does not have coastal access andre, it clearly says that it is landlocked. Now how many landlocked? 6. Now total is 2. Total is, we call it as 8. Exactly or exactly perfect, yes. Okay, Alva. Total, we call it as, be cautious here, coastal access is only 2 states. One we call it as Gujarat and the second one we call it as West Bengal. Now rest landlocked yadu sir antandre, it includes Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, the Jharkhand. Does it have an access to coast? No, boss. And Adheriti, does the Tripura and it has Mizoram has an access to coast? No, boss. It is because there is a land and that land we call it as Bangladesh. Yes or no? But now the total one we call it as 8. Now this has been asked in your CDS examination. And this number has been asked from, it is the UPSC CSE examination. It is from west to east, east to west, from middle to the east, middle to west. Done. Okay, alva? Yes or no? Now, which is the most important latitude which divides India and the Kerala, which is that? It is Tropic of, we call it as Cancer. Tropic of the Cancer, which divides India into the two equal halves. One we call it as South India or Southern India, and the second one we call it as the North India. The North India, whereas this state comes under, it is exactly dividing it into two equal halves. Nothing but ಎಷ್ಟು country or ಎಷ್ಟು states ಅಥವಾ ಎಷ್ಟು ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ it includes the 8. Now under that 8, the 2 as a coastal axis and rest 6 as what? The rest 6 as the land, the boundary, or we call it as landlocked states. Yes or no? Yes, this is majorly we call it as, this is majorly, it is the latitudes. Done? Okay, alva? Now the latitudes part, is it clear? The complete A to Z? The complete A to Z clear aita? The complete A to Z. Yes or no? Shall I erase the complete one? Yes. Clear alva? Now take some 10 seconds. Nodi ಏನಾದರೂ doubts ಇದೆಯಾ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ? Take some 10 seconds ಪಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಅಂತ. If not, we'll go for second one. Online, I hope it is clear. Few have said wrong options online. Be cautious. You should be more active, more concentrated. All these are basics. Ee basics all tak madidrenge. Someone has said 5. Yes. It is the river Mahi cuts the Tropic of Cancer twice. Exactly, the Rajasthan, Gujarat region. Okay, we'll discuss that part while discussing about it is Indian geography. This is just a basic class, alva. So we are just limiting our content to the basics. We are just building the concept now. Okay, alva. Now the same blueprint shall be applied to the longitudes also. Now first we'll understand the concept. Later on we'll discuss one by one. Okay, alva. Now first one nodadadre ಏನಪ್ಪ ಇದು? Earth. Now what is the shape of Earth? It is a geoid. Now what is geoid? It is flattened entirely. Tale matte kaal hatra hingirutte. It is flattened. Now with respect to our foot as well as height, it is flat. Whereas with respect to the stomach region, it is bulged alva. Yes or no? We call it as bulge agide. Ee ondu bulge region anna ivaga geoid anta marthogbidi. You should never say geoid. Example, they won't ask you about geoid. Rather, they'll give you an option called as oblate spheroid anta karitivi. Yes or no? Oblate spheroid. And they also discuss about this latitudes also. Now sir, now this latitudes anna we call it as the horizontal lines have been plotted above the surface of Earth. We call it as latitudes. Now after all these things, don't you think with only latitudes can we locate a particular region? Now think that this is 23.5. Think that this is 23.5. The north anta ankona. What is north? It is Tropic of Cancer. Now if I want to say a particular location in India, the 23.5 passes through, it is 8 states. So if I want to exactly locate Ranchi, now how can I say? Can I say that 23.5 will alone karanta? It is somewhere in 23.5. But if I want to pinpoint the exact location, don't you think I want vertical lines also? So this, if I want to locate a particular location, think that this is the Ranchi. Now can I say that it is 23.5 north, and can I say some 85 to 90 degrees east longitudinally anta? Yes or no? Now you map na identify madidre, map exactly says as, now if it is 23.5 degrees north, the latitude, and if it is east, it will clearly says as some 90 degrees east longitude anta. Now with this, exactly can I it is pinpoint, exactly can I the pinpoint allocation? Yes or no? Now adhe reeti, if I want to say a particular location of North America, no, can I say that somewhere in 66.5? Hello, Salient. Or else, can I exactly say that latitudes and longitudes? Nothing that, if this is, we call it as 66.5, I can say that, okay, 66.5, it is latitudes. In second one, can I say that if it is west of or western hemisphere lirodrinda, can I say that some 90 degrees the west? Yes or no? It is ಇಲ್ಲಿ latitude longitude ಬರೆಯೋ ಅವಶ್ಯಕತೆನೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. But as soon as I say it is 66.5 north and 90 degrees west. Now 66.5 north andre ಇಲ್ಲಿ, now north west andre it can never be here. It exactly ಇಲ್ಲಿ. Hope you are getting it. Shall we try now? Yes. Shall we try? Now, it is just a fun game. I'll explain all those things. But now try, Madi. It is 90 degrees north and 60 degrees east. Il baratte. 90. Now it must be what? Somewhere here. It is 90, exactly 90. Now it is towards the east and somewhere here. This location. Now if I say, can I say 100 north anta? Why not 100? Why not 100? It is our degrees is limited to what? 90 with respect to, we call it as 90 with respect to north and south pole. Whereas with respect to east and west, we'll see how many degrees we are. 180 there. Make a sir anta. Yes. Shall we try now? Shall we try? It is that 23.5 the south and 60 degrees west. ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕು, ಹಿಂಗೆ ತೋರಿಸೋದಲ್ಲ. ವೇರ್? ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಓಕೆ, ಟ್ರೈ. ಎಲ್ಲಿ? It is southwest here. Yes or no? Now ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ಇಲ್ಲಾಂದ್ರೆ ಸಿ ನೋಡಿ, ಲ್ಯಾಟಿಟ್ಯೂಡ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಲಾಂಗಿಟ್ಯೂಡ್ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದಿದ್ರೆ ಅದೇ ಆಗ್ತಿತ್ತಾನೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ 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 ಅಂತ ತೋರಿಸಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು. Yes or no? Yes. Now try next one. It is the 60 west and 20 north. That is northwest. Perfect. It is 90 east and 10 west. Can we do this? Not possible, boss. But always and always remember. Now always and always, can we plot the two longitudes at the same time? No. Idagata madakke agalla. Can we plot two latitudes at the same time? Agalla. But ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು normally? One latitude, one longitude is mandatory. Yes or no? Yes. Now, sir, one latitudes, the it is two longitudes na plot ಮಾಡಬಹುದಾ? Shall we try now? It is now one latitude is that 23.5. Now, can I plot two? One we call it as east alone, west alone, ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. Yes or no? But what is the minimum criteria we want? It is at least one latitude ಇರಬೇಕು, one longitude ಇರಲೇಬೇಕು. One latitude and one longitude is mandatory for the identification of particular location. For the identification of particular location, be cautious here. When you are being posted as an administrator, If someone says that let's meet at it is 10 degrees east andre, le macha elli anta kelbeku nenu. It is 1 or 10 degrees east andre, 10 degrees east andre we have complete zones. Where exactly? Is it, are we meeting at E? Are we meeting at Asia? Are we meeting at Africa? Are we meeting at where? It is the southern waters. But we want what? One we call it as longitude, one latitude beke beku. If not, you will be alemari, vikari tara agirdira. Nothing but we won't be getting the exact location. Hope you're getting online. Yes, yes. Okay, alva. This is our major important. This is the practicality of latitudes and longitudes. Now, recently there was a news called as NAVIC. Now we are launching 3 editions of we call it as what? 3 editions with respect to what? It is majorly we call it as navigation satellites has been launched. Navigation satellites has been launched here. Okay, again I need to click here. Okay, it is NAVIC. Now what is NAVIC? I have already said. Fastest. It is navigation with Indian constellation. Navigation with Indian constellation. See this. Majorly it is forward as back. It is India's Desi GPS. NAVIC is near defunctional. Satellites need urgent replacement. We are going for urgent replacement of this. ISRO to launch 3 more from satellite to smartphones. Now for that to work, ಈಗ GPS work ಆಗಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ or NAVIC work ಆಗಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ we want geography. That means we want latitudes and longitudes are mandatory, boss. Yes or no? Yes. Now how, sir, how it is mandatory andre? For that to take place, we want what? We want 1 minimum latitudes and 1 longitudes are mandatory. Can we plot east and west andre? It is not possible. But with this east and west, if I add 1 latitude, can you plot this? Yes or no? Now, if I say at 10 degrees north, now can we plot this both? Yes. Perfect. Yes or no? Can we plot this? This is majorly we call it as the latitudes as well as longitudes. Okay, Alvam. This is majorly the first one. Now, sir, our second major important one. Now we'll discuss one by one. Now, what do you mean by longitudes? What is longitudes? It's a imaginary line which has been plotted above the surface of the earth. In what manner? Is it horizontal or in vertical manner? It is in vertical manner. Now this vertical manner, this reference point we call it as what? 0. This reference point we call it as 0. Now the different we call it as the circles which are being plotted above the surface of the earth, we call it as what? Enanta karitivi? We call it as longitudes. Now this is our 0. Now towards the west of 0 we call it as what? It is towards the west of 0 we call it as the western hemisphere. Yes or no? We call it as western hemisphere. And the region towards the east we call it as what? Eastern hemisphere. Yes or no? This is our first one. Now this has been plotted in what manner? This is plotted in we call it as the vertical manner in an imagination, or we call it as in an imaginary manner. Now, sir, how many number of longitudes can I plot with respect to a circular fashion or with respect to we call it as oblate spheroid? How many longitudes can I plot? It is maximum we call it as what? It is 360. There is no concept of 361. It is 180 plus 1 ಆ ಒಂದು ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲಿ. It is the degree with respect to circle ಎಷ್ಟು? It is maximum number we call it as what? Maximum number of angles which are present in a circle we call it as what? 360. There is no concept of 361 ಇಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲಿ. 180 plus 1 ಇಲ್ಲ. It is complete including 0. It is 360. Yes or no? It is including 0, we call it as 360. Now the regions which are present towards the east, I already said eastern region or the eastern hemisphere, whereas the region which are present towards the west, we call it as western hemisphere. Number is clear. The second one, what about the length? What about the length of longitudes? Online fast? Yes, yes. Exactly, it is 360 aste. It is same. Now length Lodi. Now the length of different longitudes. It remains what? Same. The length remains what? The length remains same. The length remains same. What about the distance? What about distance? Now is it same or is it different? Different. Now where can you see the maximum distance between longitudes? Yelli nodbodu maximum distance. Ati agala athwa width na yelli nodbodu jasti. It is where? Near to equator. Now near to equator we can see what? The maximum, whereas minimum we can see at where? The poles. It is maximum distance anna yell nodbodu sir antandre it is near to equator anna nodbodu, near to equator. Yes or no? Hope you are getting it. Yes or no? Maximum is near to equator between two. It is longitude, the distance is maximum, whereas near to poles the distance between two longitudes are narrow or it is smaller. It is smaller. It is majorly we call it as the equator near to poles. Now near to equator it is larger. Near to poles we call it as what? The small. Now how many miles sir antandre? It is near to equator we call it as the 69 miles, whereas illi it is 38. It is 69 miles, whereas here we call it as 38. Not required, but it is smaller, whereas it is what? Larger. Larger. Now, sir, my question here is, can we remember all the longitudes? 180 to the east, 180 to the west. Can we remember all those things? But what do we need to remember now? The most important one. Now, which is the most important one? It is the most important one. The most important one. It is 0 degree. 0 degree. And the second one we call it as illi. We call it as 180 no. 180 east, eastern hemisphere. East andre the Purva. 180 west andre Paschima, the western hemisphere. Now these are majorly important one. Now which is that important? The longitude which passes through India. Which passes through India antandre 82.5 east or west. 82.5 degrees east longitude which passes through. Yadru mulaka pass agate? Which passes through India. Now can we give or can we name all this important one? Can we name this important one? Begin. Can we name this important one? Now sir, now exactly. It is the 0. 0 passes through which country? Now how have we decided the 0 as it is a reference point? Now this passes through which country? It is majorly. Now to decide this 0 degree. Now to decide this 0. Major important one. Now to decide this 0. Now to decide this 0. Now to decide this 0. In the year 1884, be cautious here, to decide 0 should pass through which country? Idna decide madodakoskara in the year 1884 we have organized the astronomers conference. We organized the astronomers conference, and this astronomers conference took place in which year? 1884. Now in this conference, they decided that 0 degrees should pass through the Greenwich. Now where is Greenwich? It is United Kingdom. Now during the 18th or during 19th century, which country was popular, boss? UK was popular. Yes or not, USA? It is UK was popular. Now this UK has imposed huge amount of pressure on this astronomical conference, said that nam country indane pass agbeku anta. Now this astronomers conference have said that okay macha, you get it, and they decided 0 will pass through Illy. 0 will pass through a Greenwich, a place where it is International Astronomical Observatory which is present here. And this Greenwich which is present in where? Which is present in United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom has clarified, saying that 0 degree will pass through. Will pass through which country? It is UK, and the 0 degree we call it as Greenwich meridian time. We call this 0 degree based on a location called as Greenwich as GMT. What is GMT now? Greenwich meridian time. It is also called as, it is the prime meridian the kuda kariತೀವಿ. This 0 degree is also called as what? This is also called as the primary meridian, or we call it as the prime meridian. The prime meridian. It is called as the prime meridian, or we call it as the primary meridian. Exactly, yes. In the year 1884, it is 1884. These are major important one. We call it as 0 degree. And the next one, this 180. Now understand with respect to globe. Now think that this is our Earth. Now don't think it is circular form. Circular is there. Now think that this ohm anta kanistirtakantadu. Think that we have fixed the reference point. Now what is this reference point? 0. Now this as 0 antandre. Don't you think exactly opposite to this ohm will be what? It is exactly opposite this ohm will be 180. 180. From 0 in the, now think that this is 0. Now 0 in the, I am moving towards east. 180. And 0 in the 180 west. Now merging point yavdidu? 180 east, 180 west. And this region we call it as what? The merging point of 180 east and 180 west. At least will it merge? Merge agata. Now this merging point we call it as international dateline. It is the merging point. Matte kelskoli. This is a glass. Glass is a glass, Allah. Okay, normal glass. Nothing that this is the ohm. Nothing that I am plotted it as what? I am plotted it as 0. Now it is 0. Now who has won the bid? Who has won the bid? The UK. Now why UK has won the bid? Because which country was popular during 1884? UK. Now UK organized this astronomers conference, and UK said that nothing doing, 0 namde anta. Program ತರ circle ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು nothing but ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು ಎಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ದೆ, and whatever line which is passing through, it is Greenwich, that should be 0, nothing doing anta. And everyone said that chalo, whatever you say is right. And we said that it is, we have stamped it saying that 0 anta. Now this is 0. Now 0 in the whatever thing which is moving towards east, we call it as ಎಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ? It is 180 east. Now whatever the thing which is moving towards the left, we call it as what? West. Now ಎಷ್ಟು ಡಿಗ್ರೀಸ್ ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಈಸ್ಟ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಸರ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಮ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿಮಮ್ ಎಷ್ಟು? 180 ವೆಸ್ಟ್, 180 ಈಸ್ಟ್. Yes or no? Yes. Now don't you think exactly zero oppositely, 180 west and 180 east will merge, will meet. Yes or no? Meet agato ilvo? Yes. Now that meeting point we call it as what? That meeting point we call it as international dateline. IDL anta karitivi. It is that point we call it as what? The meeting point of 180 west and 180 east we call it as international dateline. Okay now? Yes or no? International dateline. And the next one, each and every country have decided their own longitudes. Now, if it is USA has different longitudes. If Africa has different longitudes. Asia, China has different longitudes. Pakistan has different longitudes. Majorly, India has different longitudes. Now, what is the longitude of India? The longitude of India we call it as, it is Indian dateline, or we call it as, it is the Indian one we call it as Indian Standard Time anta karitivi. We call it as Indian Standard Time. Now what is the Indian Standard Time? Andre IST. ನೀವು ಮೊದಲು it is phone ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ we used to call it as some ISD number. ಬೋರ್ಡ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಬರೀತಿದ್ರು. It is Indian Standard Time ಅಥವಾ Indian Standard Date ಅಂತ ಕರೀತಿದ್ವಿ. ISD ನಂಬರ್ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಟೆಲಿಫೋನ್ ಬೂತ್ ಆಪೋಸಿಟ್ ಇರ್ತಿತ್ತು ಆರ್ ಅಂಟಿಸ್ತಿರ್ತಿದ್ರು. ಹೌದಾ ಇಲ್ವೋ? And that we call it as IST number. What is IST number? It is Indian Standard Time ಅಂತ ಕರೀತೀವಿ. Indian Standard Time, or we call it as Indian Dateline. What is Indian Dateline? Get it enough? Yes or no? ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ ಬರಿಸಿ ನಮ್ಮನೆ. Now, all this are fine, sir. All this are fine. Now think that now for our it has the representation. Can I plot it in the plane? It has the page. Can I plot it in plane page? Nothing but the 0 degree we call it as what? 0 degree we call it as what? Greenwich meridian time. Yes or no, boss? Greenwich meridian time, which passes through which country? Which passes through, we call it as United Kingdom. And the regions which are present towards the east of Greenwich or the prime meridian, we call it as which hemisphere? Eastern hemisphere. Now with respect to our eastern hemisphere, how many degrees do we have? 180 degrees east or west. Now towards the west we call it as 180 degrees west. This is for our convenience. This is for our convenience. Now the meeting point of east and west we call it as the international dateline. First understand, I'll show you the complete map also. I will show you the complete, it is the pictographical representation also. Okay, alva? These are the Greenwich meridian time, 180 west and 180 east. Now think that, what is the time required? What is the time required for the sun to complete one, we call it as rotation? One rotation of earth na complete madadakke, what time will it take? 24 hours? Nothing but it is to complete 360 degree. It is taking how many hours? Perfect. Now for each and every hour, it will take how many degrees? 360 divided by 24. Now 360 divided by 24 andre, it will take how many degrees? It is 15 degrees. 15 degrees. 15 degrees. Now 12 will calculate, 12 2s are, 12 3s are. Yes or no? It will take ಎಷ್ಟು degrees sir ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, for each and every hour it will move, the sun will move how many degrees? That is 15 degrees. Yes or no? Now it will move. Understand, keep on understanding that, keep on understanding now. Now Now can I divide my complete, it is globe into, it is 15 degrees, it is, these are 0 degree, the 15 degree, 15, ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ 30, 45, 60, it is okay up till 180, 80 or we call it as 60, 75 ಬರುತ್ತೆ, 75, 90 ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಓಕೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ it is 15, 30, 45, followed by we call it as the 60, 75, think that some 90, it is 180. 180 west or east? It is 15 west, 30, 45, it is 60, 75, 90, 105, 120, 135, it is followed by 150, 175 or 180. Yes, so it is west west. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ್ದು ಬರುತ್ತೆ? East. Now to complete 15 degrees, it will take how much hour? 1 hour. Now if it is, ಈಗ UK ನಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾದ್ರು, now think that in UK, if it is 1 o'clock, what will be the time at 15 degrees? 2 o'clock. What will be the time at 30 degrees? 3 o'clock. Hope you're getting. What will be the time at 60? What will the time at 180? David and Garviga. Okay, now try one. No, I'm not giving you an assignment, rather we'll try. Let us we'll try now. Now first one. Now we want complete the graph now. First we'll try east, adadmele west try mana. First let's try, it is 15, 30, 45, 15, 30, 45, adadmele fast 60, adadmele 90, 20, 35, 50, it is 75 ಆಗತ್ತೆ, 50, 65, 80. Okay, now it's all these are what? All this are east. All this are east. All these are east. Now think that it is UK ನಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ there is a cricket match going on. Now UK ನಲ್ಲಿ ಈಗ if it is the 12 AM, now what will be at 15 degrees? 1 hour extra. It is 1 PM, the 2 PM, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It is PM. Okay, now what is the time in India? Time in India, it is ilbaratte, and that we call it as what? 82.5 degrees east. What is the time here? Now, ilinda ilige 1 hour, the 2 hour, the 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. But now it is not 90, rather middle. We call it as what? It is what is the time antandre 5 hours 30 minutes. 5 hours 30 minutes. Is it ahead or is it behind? It is ahead of what? Greenwich meridian time. ಹೌದೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ? 5 ಗಂಟೆ 30 ನಿಮಿಷ ಮುಂದೆ of what reference point? Greenwich. Yes or no, boss? Okay alva? It is the Greenwich meridian time, we call it as, that is 5 hours 30 minutes ahead of what? Ahead of GMT. Clear? Now is the east one done. Now next one will go for west. We'll go for west. It is now 0, now 0, 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, 5, 20, 35, 50, 65. Is it west or east? West. Navig Niveli. Now, if it is west, now think that at 0 it is 1 p.m. Now we are moving towards western hemisphere. Now we need to minus alva. Now will 1 adra ille nagate 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes or no? Yes. Now the rule here is if a region, if it is west of Greenwich meridian time, should we need to subtract or should we need to add? It is subtract how many hours per 15 degrees? It is 1 hour. We will be subtracting how many degrees? Now if it is east hoಗ್ತಿದ್ರೆ, we will be adding how many hours? We will be adding 1 hour. We will be adding, it is 15 degrees. Yes or no? Yes. Now shall we try now with map? Okay. Now it is scales kodi ಏನು ಬರ್ಕೋಬೇಡಿ, ನಾನೇ ಬರೆಸಿ ನಾಳೆ. Now I want you to understand the concepts. ಬರೆಸಿ ನಾನು. It is tomorrow. Let's go on. If time permits today itself. But first, we'll understand the concepts, but I'll tomorrow. I'll give you the exact one, that is what is longitudes, we'll solve the things. Now, can you see 0 degree? Where is 0 degree? 0. And the second one, we call it as, this is, what is this? International date line. No, it is not an issue. Now see this. Can you observe 0 longitude which is passing through where? And in United Kingdom, now it is also called as what? Prime meridian. Now prime meridian passes through, observe now, it is passing through United Kingdom, it is passing through the France, passing through Spain, passing through Algeria, the Mali, Burkina Faso, passing through. It is UK, passing through the Atlantic Ocean, 0. Now, a region which is present to the east of this prime meridian, we call it as what? Eastern hemisphere, which is present to the west, we call it as what? The western hemisphere. Now, observe which all continents comes from the western hemisphere. It is North America, Greenland, South America, and parts of what? Antarctica also. And towards the eastern hemisphere, which all continents comes on eastern hemisphere? It is major Asia, parts of Europe also, and Africa. No, majority of Africa. It is Antarctica, Australia, it is Asia, it is Europe and Africa. Yes. Now observe longitudes. Observe the longitudes. Which are longitudes? We have different longitudes. Yes or no? Now along with the things, can we observe 0 degrees latitudes? Now 0 degree latitudes passes through which all countries? It is observed from east to west. It is first one, we call it as, it passes through Indonesia. It passes through, we call it as the Maldives. It passes through, it is middle of Africa, South America, majorly Ecuador. Yes or no? It is now to the north of this equator, we call it as what? Northern hemisphere. Towards the south, we call it as what? Southern hemisphere. Now sir, all these are fine. Now where is India? Where is India? Now observe this. Now we'll plot all these things. We'll plot all these things. Now this we call it as 0. Now they have given 30, 60 as a reference. Now 15 ಗೆ 1 hour ಆದರೆ for 30 ಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟಾಗುತ್ತೆ? To us. Now whatever the regions, if it is towards the east of 0 degree Greenwich meridian time, will it be addition or will it be subtraction? Now whatever the region which is present towards the west of 0 degree, will it be subtraction or addition? Subtraction. Nothing but it is, if I am moving towards the west of any region, will I be getting a day or will I be losing a day? Understand? It is, remember, now it is, I am at 0 degree, think that it is 1 o'clock. But now, if I am moving backwards, will I be getting a day or will I be losing a day? Getting. Okay. Now think that this is 0. Now think that 0 degree really. Now I am at, it is today, think that it is Tuesday. Now think that it is exactly at 7 o'clock. Now think that now from here I am taking a flight and I am landing at 150 degrees east. Yenagatte. Will I lose or will I gain? Lose. Now how many hours? It is illadre. If it is 7 andre 9 agatte. It is 11. Whereas here it is 1 o'clock. Now midnight 1 o'clock. Now 1, the 3, whereas here morning 5 o'clock. Directly I am jumping to where? Midnight 5 gantege. Now will I lose or will I gain? Lose. Nothing but we need to add the number of hours. No doubt. We need to add here, but I will be losing a hour or I will be losing a day, andre I will be losing a day. Because without enjoying this midnight, I have directly landed at where? 150. Yes or no? But it is if I am moving from 0. Nothing that I am going to, it is California. Now California, it is located where? 120 west. Now if it is 120 west, it is 0 only. Now it is 7 o'clock. 7 ಆದರೆ ಇಲ್ಲೇನಾಗತ್ತೆ 5 o'clock, the 3 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Now 11 o'clock ಯಾವುದು? It is, we call it as mid. It is afternoon 11 o'clock. Now don't you think again I can experience the same day? ಮತ್ತೆ experience ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. If I am staying in USA, I can experience, it is ಮತ್ತೆ I can experience the evening. It is ಮತ್ತೆ sunrise ನೋಡಬಹುದು, sunset ನೋಡಬಹುದು, all those things. Yes or no? Now with respect to if you are moving towards the back date, it is we need to do what? Subtraction. Will I be losing a day or will I be gaining a day? It is gaining a day. Okay now. Yes or no? This is the advantage of what? This is the advantage of studying a longitude. Now what is the advantage or application of studying a longitudes? We call it as what? We call it as, we can get to know about, we call it as the timelines, as well as we can decide the different, we call it as international timelines, and that we call it as what? It is the applications of longitudes. Now think that at USA, if it is 11 o'clock afternoon, now what is the time at, we call it as 1:50 east. Try ಮಾಡಿ, ನನಗೆ ಹಂಗೆ random ಆಗಿ ಹೇಳಬಾರದು. Try, without trying you should never say. It is, my question is at California 11 o'clock that Tuesday afternoon, what is the time at, we call it as the 1:50, nothing but at Papua New Guinea. What is the time? Online first, 12. Try. 5. Is it the same day or the next day? I need to lose because I am moving towards where? East. East in move ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ರೆ I need to lose a day. Yes or no? Now try madam. Now it is 11. Now 11 ಆದ್ರೆ 19 ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ? It is 1. It is 3. The 5, the 7, 9, 11, ಮತ್ತೆ 1. 1 ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? Next day. Yes or no? Wednesday. Now the next one we call it as, ನಮ್ಗೆ next reference point we call it as the 3, and ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ the 5 AM or PM. Tuesday or Wednesday? Wednesday. My simple logic here is, if I am moving toward the east, will I be losing a day or gaining a day? Losing a day. Now, ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ shall we try next one? Now think that, ಈಗ ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ತೀರ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ ಹೇಳಿ. ಯಾವ್ದು ನಿಮ್ ಇಷ್ಟ, ನಿಮ್ ಚಾಯ್ಸ್, ನೀವೇ ಹೇಳಿ, ನೀವೇ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಹೇಳಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಬಟ್ ಇಫ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ರಾಂಗ್ ಐ ಟ್ರೈ. ಈಸ್ಟ್ ಇಂದ ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಗಾ, ಈಸ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೆಯಾ ಚೈನಾದಲ್ಲಿ? ಥಿಂಕ್ ದಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್, ಯು ಆರ್ ಇನ್ ಚೈನಾ, ನಾವು ಕ್ಯಾಲಿಫೋರ್ನಿಯಾ ಬೇಡ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಕ್ಯಾಲಿಫೋರ್ನಿಯಾ ಬೇಡ. ಓಕೆ ಸೇಮ್. ಓಕೆ ಆಯ್ತು, ಇನ್ ಖುಷಿ ಯಾಕೆ? ನಾ ಥಿಂಕ್ ದಟ್ ನ್ಯೂಯಾರ್ಕ್, ಐ ಟೇಕ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ದಿಸ್ ಒನ್. ಓಕೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ದಿಸ್ ಒನ್ ಇದೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ 90 ವೆಸ್ಟ್. Now this is at what location? It is 150 ante. It is 120 east. Try ಮಾಡಿ ಪಟ್ಬಿಡಂತ. You should try in the paper. Try ಮಾಡಿ ಪಟ್ಬಿಡಂತ. And random ಆಗಿ ಬೇಡ, try ಮಾಡಿ at least. Okay, time ಹೇಳಿ. Okay, 2 AM. Which day? It is Tuesday. Okay, try. ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಸೇಮ್ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಬರಬೇಕು. Everyone should get the same answer. Try. Online fast. Let's see who will do the best. Is it online or offline? ನೋಡೋಣ ಪಟ್ಪಟ್ ಅಂತ. Okay. Feeling easier? Yes. Okay. Next try. It is 12. Correct banta? Ellaru same. 12 Tuesday or Wednesday? The same day or Monday? It is Monday. Okay alva? ನೋಡೋಣ ಈಗ. Now 120 ಹತ್ರ if it is 2 ಇಲ್ಲೇನಿರುತ್ತೆ? It is 12, it is 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 12. It is if it is Tuesday andre what will happen here? It is Monday afternoon. Okay alva? Done. It is Monday. Clear alva? Yes or no? It is next one we'll try. ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕು ಈ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ರೈಟ್ ಸೈಡ್. ಒನ್ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಬೇಗನೆ ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡಪ್ಪ, ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡಿ. ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಓಕೆ. ನಿನ್ಗೆ ಏನು ಗೊತ್ತದೆ ಹೇಳು. ನಿನ್ ಇಷ್ಟ ಆಗಿರೋ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ ಯಾವುದು? ವಿತ್ ದ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕಂತಿದೆಯಾ? ನಾರ್ತ್ ಕೊರಿಯಾ? ಓಕೆ ಆಯ್ತು, ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಓಕೆ. ಬೇಡ ನಾರ್ತ್ ಕೊರಿಯಾಗೆ. Now think that one Africa ತಗೋಣ. Now think that I am at South Africa. Now South Africa ದಲ್ಲಿ, in South Africa think that it is Monday. South Africa Monday. Now think that it is that 12 a.m. That 12 a.m. What is the time at we call it as 180 degrees west. What is the time at 180 degrees east? Try. Edu ಬೇಕು ನಿಮಗೀಗ. Okay, at 10 o'clock, is it same day or next day or previous day? ಯಾವ ಕಡೆಗೆ? It is towards west. It must be previous day. Now previous day ಎಷ್ಟು ಸರ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ if it is 12 am ಅಂದ್ರೆ exactly you can count it as what? The same 12 o'clock. ಅಲ್ಲಿ am ಇದೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ? ಇಲ್ಲಿ pm ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಂಡೇ ಇದ್ರೆ it is ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸಂಡೇ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. Yes or no? ಪಕ್ಕಾ? ನಾವು ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ if it is Monday ಆದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗಬೇಕು? ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಟ್ಯೂಸ್ಡೇ ಆಗಬೇಕು. if it is 12 am ಆದ್ರೆ yes or no calculation, but we'll try again. Okay ನೋಡೋಣ. okay exactly okay try ಮಾಡೋಣ. it is now Monday, it is 12 ಇದೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ? It is 2, the 4, the 6, 8, the 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. It is 12, 1, 2, it is 4. Okay, 60, 90, 120, 150. Correct. Okay alva? It is 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock ಏನಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ? It is the PM. Is it the same day or the next day? It is the next day. It is nothing but ಇಲ್ಲಿ we are going for what? We are going for addition. We will be losing a day. We'll be losing a day if we go towards the east. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ we'll try here. We'll try here. ನಾವು ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಈಗ ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡಿ ಪಟ್ಬಿಡಂತ. It is Monday. It is ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ 12 ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು. It is 10, 8, 6, 4, it is 2. It is the 2, ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ it is 12. Okay ಅಲ್ವಾ? It is 12, ಮತ್ತೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ? It is here we call it as 0, the 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, followed by 180. Okay ಅಲ್ವಾ? Yes, I hope you are getting it. Yes, this we call it as going towards the west ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ? It is I need to go for subtraction, and I need to, or I'll gain a day or I'll lose a day. It is gain a day. Now sir, now think that I am at South Africa, but I want to experience the next day now itself. But what can I do now? Now ನನಗೆ 12 ಗಂಟೆ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಗುರು. Now I am at 7 o'clock at India, but now I want to experience 12 o'clock. Now in which place can I experience 12 o'clock the same day? It is Yelli sir andre same day I need to move towards east. Same day bekalva. Now same day bekandre Pacific. Now sir, I want to experience the morning ಬೆಳಗಿನ ಜಾವ ನನಗೆ ಬೇಕು. If you want to gain a day, west, where? 12 o'clock or ಮುಂಜಾನೆ ಅದೇ? Yes or no? It is majorly I need to move towards the western region. Yes or no? ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ ಇಲ್ವೋ? Yes, sir, ಏನು ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಬಿಟ್ಟಾಕಿ. ತಲೆಕೆಡಿಸ್ಕೊಬೇಡಿ. Okay. But sir, ಇದೆಲ್ಲ okay. But last we'll try one more. It is 0 ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು ಒಂದು ಐಡಿಯಾ ಹೇಳಿ. What is the time now? It's at 0 at UK. Nothing that. But now if it is India Delhi, if it is 7 or think that if it is 6:30 p.m. what is the time at 0? It is 5 hours ahead. Now if we are moving towards backwards, I need to minus how many hours? 5 hours 30 minutes. 5 hours 30 minutes minus ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಗಂಟೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ? 1 o'clock. It is the time at UK. ಎಷ್ಟು ಗಂಟೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ? It is 1 o'clock. Now 1 o'clock, is it mid or is it the midnight? It is, we call it as ಯಾಕೆ? It is mid afternoon alva. Hope you're getting it. It is evening. Now 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The 5, 4, the 3, 2, 1 is nothing but what? Afternoon. Now UK ಏನಾಗ್ತಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ it is 1 o'clock afternoon. Now what is the time at it is USA now? If it is 1 o'clock, 1 andre illénagutte? It is, we call it as 11 o'clock. 2 to us 11 illi. It is 9. It is the 9, 7, 5, 3 or the 2 o'clock. Yes or no? It depends. Nothing but illi the simple rule here is what? The simple rule here is if you are moving towards the west, you will be gaining a day. You need to subtract. But ಅದೇ east ಗೆ ಮೂವ್ ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ರೆ it is I will be losing a day. Okay na? Yes. Shall we write this now? Oh, yes. Okay, done. Happy at least? ಏನೋ ಕಲಿತಾ ಇದೀವಿ ಅಂತ? Happy? Okay. Done. The first one we call it as the first one dividing the longitudes. Now first one longitudes we call it as what? Under longitudes. The first one we call it as the introduction. Now under introduction, the definition. Now what is the definition? It is an imaginary line. It is an, matlab same, I am following the same blueprint. If you can remember, it's an imaginary line. It is an imaginary line. Second, which is plotted on where? The surface of the earth. Perfect. Which is plotted on the surface of the earth. In what manner? Is it an horizontal manner or vertical manner? Vertical manner. Yes or no? Definition satisfied? It's an imaginary line which is plotted on the surface of the earth. ಯಾವ ತರ ಉದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ಲಾಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಎಂದು ಕರಿತೀವಿ? We call it as longitude. In a long manner. The second one we call it as, now it is also called as what? It is also called as what? the parallels of prime meridian anta karithivi. Enikava parallels of prime meridian anta karithivi. Now 0 degree longitude is called as what? 0 degree longitude is called as the prime meridian. Normally, though it is not parallel, it is called as the parallels of the prime meridian. The parallels of the prime meridian. Okay, alva? Yes or no? Clear? Artha agtidiya boss? Okay. This is the first one. The second one. What is the second one? The salient features. Now, while discussing about salient features, which all things we need to discuss as a part of our blueprint? It is first one we call it as the first one we call it as the number of longitudes. How many, boss? It is 360 or 361. It is the degrees of the circle is always clear. It is 360. Now this 360, it is divided into 180 west and 180 what? 180 east. Okay, alva? Now this can be divided it into, we call it as 180 degrees east and 180 degrees what? The west. 180 degrees east and 180 degrees. It is western hemisphere. First one. The second one we call it as the length. The length, is it same or is it different? It is length is same. Perfect. It is length is same. Length is same. What about the distance? What about that distance anta nodadadre? Is it different or same? If it is different, where can you see the largest distance? Where can you see smallest? Near to equator, we can see the largest distance. Smallest only, the poles. Smallest one we call it as the poles atra. Now, ಎಷ್ಟು kilometer appa equator atra? It is 69 miles. 69, whereas ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ it is 38. Perfect. Yes. See, this gives more satisfaction. ನಿಮ್ಗೆಲ್ಲ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಆಗಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಆದ್ರೆ it is done with the game. And the last one we call it as the last one what? The most important longitudes. It is okay. Now most important we call it as 0 degree. Now 0 degree we call it as what? It is Greenwich meridian time. Greenwich meridian time. It is also called as what? The prime meridian. And the second one we call it as what? 180 degrees west and east. West and east we call it as international what? Dateline. IDL anta karitivi. International dateline which passes through. Tomorrow we'll discuss international dateline, or else if time permits we'll discuss. International dateline, it passes through which ocean? The Pacific Ocean. But beda barkobedi, I have not discussed. But at least this I have discussed. International dateline, 180 west and east merging point we call it as what? It is international dateline. Okay, now this is our second one. What about third one? It is the third one we call it as Indian Standard Time under uniqueness. The third one is called as uniqueness, and that uniqueness we call it as what? It is the Indian Standard Time. Now, India's Standard Time. What is the longitude of India? It is 82.5. It is 82.5 degrees east or west? East. Now this 82.5 degrees east, is it the ahead or behind GMT? It is ahead. How many hours ahead? The 5 hours are 30 minutes. Perfect. 5 hours 30 minutes ahead of yaudu. Ahead of, we call it as the prime meridian or Greenwich meridian time. Greenwich meridian time. Now shall we discuss this 82.5 degrees passes through how many states? Yes or no? Yes? Okay. Now Indian Standard Time. What is the Indian Standard Time? It is, I've already said, it is 82.5 what? It is 82.5 or 82 degrees 30 minutes east or west. It is east of Greenwich meridian time. Now it passes through how many states? First one we call it as Uttar Pradesh. It passes through Uttar Pradesh. And the second one we call it as what? The Madhya Pradesh. The third one we call it as Chhattisgarh. Fourth one Orissa. Fifth one Andhra. Now it passes through how many states? The 5 important states. Now, 5 important the states. The one, one it is, that 2, the 3, 4, 5, only 5. How 6? It is 1 we call it as Uttar Pradesh. Second one we call it as Madhya Pradesh. And the third one we call it as what? The Chhattisgarh. The fourth one we call it as Orissa. The fifth one we call it as what? Andhra. It passes through how many states? It passes through, we call it as the 5 important states. The 5 important the states. Now which all anta nodadadre? It is UP, Madhya Pradesh, the Chhattisgarh, Orissa and Andhra. Now most important one here is it passes through which location of UP? It is, we call it as the majorly we call it as the Mirzapur. Majorly, remember this, Mirzapur is highly important one. Now, along with these things, I will also plot, we call it as which one? It is the Tropic of Cancer. The Tropic of Cancer, now we call it as Gujarat, the Rajasthan, the Madhya Pradesh, the Chhattisgarh, the Jharkhand, West Bengal, Tripura and Mizoram. Now which is common for both? Now the common for both we call it as Madhya Pradesh is common. Chhattisgarh is the only 2 states. It is the only 2 states where what? Where both Tropic of Cancer, can I say 23.5 degrees north as well as 82.5 degrees east passes through with how many states? Only 2 states. This time I am expecting a question on this. It has not been asked. I'm expecting question on this. We call it as it passes through both. That we call it as what? Madhya Pradesh as well as the Chhattisgarh. Madhya Pradesh as well as we call it as the Chhattisgarh. This is the only two states where ನಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು Tropic of Cancer ಕೂಡ pass ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. At the same time we call it as what? Indian Standard Time also passes through. Indian Standard Time also passes through. Exactly online it is 5. Be cautious here. Now Tropic of Cancer ಮೂಲಕ how many states it passes through? It is 8. How many coastal and how many landlocked? Now 2 coastal, perfect, and 6 landlocked. Now with respect to Indian Standard Time, how many countries or how many states? How many coastal and how many landlocked? It is 2 coastal. Again 2 coastal. That 2 coastal, remaining 3 landlocked. Now sir, which is this 2 coastal andre? One we call it as the Orissa, and the second one we call it as what? And remaining landlocked, UP, MP, Chhattisgarh. Yes or no? It is landlocked. Okay na? It is, you should remember based on mapping, not mugging up the content. You should never mug up. Okay, but naale at least atlas tartira. Yes, tomorrow mandatorily at least bring it as, we call it as, it is majorly. It is, you can go for Orient Black Swan, or we call it as Oxford. I have said already. It is student atlas, school atlas tandira mate. You should never buy school atlas. The school atlas is only for school kids. Normally for kids game, you should buy student atlas. The student atlas. Or you can go for Orient Black Swan also. This is also good. Okay, Alva? Yes. This is majorly, we call it as majorly. We call it as what? It is uniqueness. India passes through this. Okay, now. Done. And the next one, this is our third one. And the next one we call it as, what is the application? Now, what is the application of studying about? What is the application about studying about longitudes? First, application. Now we can study about what? We can study about the time zones. We can study about what? Study about time zones, and now we can study. Yes, sir, we can study about time zones. Now, sir, how time zones are being decided? Now, how time zones? Now, time zones, I have already said, this is 0 degree Greenwich meridian time. It is the places which are present towards the east of GMT. We call it as what? It is, we call it as, it gains a day. It gains, it is number of hours. Now, number of hours are being gained. Now, Inge sir andre, what he said, it is to cover 360 degree. The sun takes how many hours? 24 hours. Now, for 1 hour, how many degrees? 15 degrees. Now, for 1 degree, it will take how many minutes? 4 minutes. It will take Inge sir antandre, nothing but we call it as, now we call it as 15 by 60. 1 hour is nothing but 60 minutes. Now 15 ones are 15 fours. We call it as what? It is, we call it as the 4 minutes. Now each and for every 1 degrees, it will take how many minutes? 4 minutes. Be cautious here. It will take 4 minutes per 1 degrees. Yes or no? Or we call it as to cover 15 degrees, it will take how many minutes? It is 60 minutes, or we call it as 1 hour. Okay, Alva, I hope this calculation is clear. Nothing but first one I said, it is 360 degrees, it will be taking how many minutes? It is for 360 degrees, 24 hours. And the second one for 1 hour, it will take how many minutes? It is 1 hour 15 degrees. And the second one for 1 degree, it will be taking the 4 minutes. Yes or no? At least this should be clear in your mind. Now, what is the major important application? The first application we call it as, we will get to know about identification of a location. And the second one we call it as, the time zones can be identified. And the third one I have already said, it is a location which is present to the east of Greenwich Meridian time. We call it as what? It is, we call it as addition of an hours. Now for every 15 degrees, there is an addition of 1 hour. There is an addition of, we call it as 1 hour. And the second one, if I am moving towards the west of Greenwich Meridian time, it is, I need to subtract. Now what does subtraction mean? Is it is gaining a day or losing a day? It is gaining. If it is addition ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ರೆ, I will be losing a day. I will be losing a day. And this is majorly we call it as what? This is majorly we call it as, it is application of longitudes. Now gaining, sir, ಎಷ್ಟು gain ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, it is for every 15 degrees, I will be gaining how much degrees? It is, I will be gaining, it is for every 15 degrees, 1 hour or 60 minutes. Now for each and every degree, it will be taking 4 minutes. Okay, alva? Yes or no? Now sir, now if I am moving towards the east of Greenwich Meridian time, I will be, I need to do what? I need to do what here? I need to add here, nothing but 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour. Yes or no? Nothing but I need to add what I need to add here? I need to add, it is number of hours. Whereas if I am moving towards the west, I need to do what? The subtraction. Now subtraction andre, it is a gain of a day. Whereas if I am moving towards the east, we call it as what? It is losing a day. It is losing a day anta ಕರೀತೀವಿ. The losing a day. The losing a day. Yes or no? This we call it as losing a day. This we call it as the losing a day. The losing a day. This we call it as losing a day. This we call it as the subtracting. Majorly we call it as, we have discussed about all these aspects. This is the major important applications. Now coming to our last important one, we call it as, last important one, the meeting point of this 180 west and 180 east, we call it as what? International dateline. This we call it as international dateline. The meeting point of international dateline, or 180 west and 180 east, we call it as international dateline. Okay, Alva? That international dateline part, it is shall be discussed today or tomorrow? That is today itself. Now if that is the case, give a heading called as international dateline. International dateline. We'll complete this today. Okay. It is international dateline. International dateline. Now is this international dateline. Now observe this. Now this international dateline. Now is this international dateline, is it straight manner or is it zigzag? Why it is zigzag? Because to have a single timeline for the island countries, it is to have the single, we call it as, now think that this is our international dateline. Now this international dateline passes through which ocean? Which is this ocean? It is Pacific Ocean. Understand here? First one, it is international dateline ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ, international dateline. Now this we call it as 180 ಏನಿದು? 180 east or west? Asia. 180 east. This we call it as 180 west. Now while discussing about 180 west, I said that we need to subtract. There is a gain of what? Gain of a day. This should be clear. I hope this is clear. And second one, if I am moving towards the east, I need to add, but I'll be losing a day. Losing a day. Clear alva? Now the meeting point of 180 east and 180 west. This is Asia. This is, we call it as what? North America. North America. Yes or no? Now the meeting point we call it as what? International dateline. Now this international dateline is not straight. Rather in what manner? Zigzag manner. Now to provide what? Now to provide it is, we call it as a single time for all the, I can say, countries which are present here. Now to reduce the confusion. Now think that if I am dividing this one. Now don't you think this is a Siberian region which is present or which belongs to Russia? Now can we have a different timeline for this region, small region? Not possible. Adheriti, think that this, we call it as Kirimati, Midway, all these are islands which belongs to majorly, we call it as a group of islands called as Polynesian Islands. Can we have different time? Now don't you think different time leads to different confusions? Now a confusion reduce maadakke. To reduce the confusion, we are going for what? We are going for, it is alteration of a line in what manner? Zigzag manner. Example idin kelidare. International dateline, it's in what manner? We call it as zigzag manner. International dateline, it's in what manner? We call it as in a zigzag manner. Okay, alva? It's in zigzag manner. Yes or no? Zigzag manner. Now, sir, all these are fine. All these are the fine now. Now think that this is we call it as international dateline. Correct, alva? Which passes through which ocean? The Pacific Ocean. It's in what manner? Is it straight line or in zigzag manner? Zigzag manner. Now this I said, it is we need to add, it's a loss of a day. Here we need to subtract, it's a gain of a day. But now think that, now if I am moving from North America to Asia, what will happen? It is, we will lose a day or we will gain a day. It is lose a day. Because now think that, if it is Monday in America, directly Tuesday irate. Example keltare. If you are moving from, it is North America to Asia, if you are crossing via international dateline, will you lose a day or will you gain a day? Lose a day. Via international dateline, if you are moving towards the west, there is a loss. If you are moving towards if you are moving towards the east, I will gain a day. Nothing but from Tuesday, Matte Monday, I will be experiencing again Tuesday. Confusion? Little bit? Okay. Iga, understand? See, confusion irrelevant. This is complicated. Adukoskara I said tomorrow. But illa sir, now talented, nale mana, nale badi gote madi andralla adike. I know it's complicated. Now think that, this is Greenwich Meridian time. Greenwich Meridian. Now think that it is the 7 o'clock, it is Tuesday. 7 o'clock we call it as Tuesday. This is 7. Now here it is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Or we call it as if it is 7 adre at international dateline any rehta hai. It is 7 AM irate. In a simpler one. Now 7 AM. Is it a same day or a different day? It is different day. We call it as what? Wednesday. But now I am moving from Greenwich. Now it is 7 adre. It is east of this side. 7 PM. It will be what? 7 AM. Now if it is Tuesday, don't you think it will be Monday? Yes or no? Yes. Now if I am moving from it is this side to this side, is it good or bad? Why good? Because I will gain a day. Nothing but Monday admit I can experience Tuesday and I can experience Wednesday also. But if I am moving from, we call it as Monday to Wednesday direct again. Will there be it is loss of a day or a gain of a day? Yes or no? Yes, this is more than sufficient. But now it is right on the points. Again tomorrow I'll discuss this, not an issue. Now with respect to international dateline, what is the location of international dateline? First, what is the location? It passes through Pacific Ocean. First one we call it as it passes through Pacific Ocean. Second one, where do we call a particular location as international dateline? The merging point or the meeting point of what? It is 180. It is the east and 180 east or the 180 west. 180 east and 180 west. The meeting point we call it as what? International dateline. Okay now, international dateline. The second, now is it in straight manner or in zigzag manner? It's in zigzag manner. Exactly, it's a zigzag manner. Zigzag manner. Now, if I am moving from 180 degrees east in the 180 degrees west move adre. Now I am moving from east to west. Will there be a gain or a loss? A gain. If I am moving from 180 east to west, there is what? There is a gain of a day. I can celebrate my birthday twice, boss. If there is a miss, England birthday, Wednesday at 7 o'clock, I'm not able to celebrate because of class. But think that I can celebrate, I can go to USA and I can celebrate my birthday twice. One divattu, it is the next on Wednesday in African or I can say American continent. And that's the benefit, you can do it. And the next one, if you are moving from 180 west to 180 east, it is loss of a day. Be cautious here. I'm not using a terminology called as western and eastern hemisphere. I'm using a term called as east-west. 180, this is east, or sorry, this west and this east. There is a loss of a day. Here there is loss, here there is what? The gain of a day. Yes or no? And this we call it as what? This we call it as the international date line. This we call it as international date line. Okay now? Yes or no? Yes. Now today we'll summarize all the content, whatever we have discussed. Last and we'll wind up. Okay. Now coming towards today's class, we call it as the geography class 2. We have started with respect to, we call it as which theme? We have started with respect to a theme called as what? It is the theme, the 2 of the chapter 1, the theme 2 of chapter 1. Now with respect to chapter 1 theme 2, what is that theme talks about? It is imaginary, the lines. While discussing about imaginary lines, we have discussed about 2 important things. What is that 2 important things? Now 2 important things we call it as the latitudes, and the second one we call it as what? Longitudes. Now while discussing about these things, we have discussed about our blueprint called as, what is our blueprint here? It is introduction. Second one we call it as the salient features, and the third one we call it as what? Uniqueness. Now under introduction we call it as the definition, and it's also called as the salient features we have discussed about, we call it as, it is the number, the length, we call it as the width, the distance, the most important one, and the last one, and the uniqueness we have discussed about, it is Indian one. Yes or no? Now shall we discuss all these things in a single, it is box? Single box will try mana. Yes. Now with respect to single box, Inge sir antandre, this is a summary of the complete class 2. The first one we call it as longitudes, and the second one we call it as what? Latitudes. Now this is our criteria or parameters. Be cautious here. Whenever we are going for comparison, mandatory one is what? Criteria or parameters must be there. Now first one, it is the definition. It is second one, we call it as, also called as the number, the length, distance, most important, uniqueness. Shall we try one by one? Need faster try Madi. What is definition? Imaginary line which is plotted in what manner? Horizontal. What about this? Vertical. It's also called as the parallels of equator, the parallels of prime meridian. Perfect, boss. It has number. How many number? 181 in number idu. Perfect. 360 number. Length same or different? It is different. What about your? Same. What about distance? Same or different? Same. Illi? Different. What about the most important one? How many most important one? It is 4 or 5. It is one we call it equator. It is Arctic, Antarctic. We call it as majorly Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, South Pole, North Pole 7. Whereas here, it is only we call it as the prime meridian, 180 west, 180 east merging point, and we call it as international date line. It is 2. But uniqueness, India, we call it as 23 and a half. It is the north. And how many states andre? 8. And within this, 2 plus 6. The 2 coastal and 6 landlocked. Whereas we call it as 82.5. It is 5 states. Under this 5 states are 2 coastal and 3 landlocked. Done with game. Yes, sir. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Along. Yes. This is majorly we call it as. This is about our summary. Okay, if you want, you can take a screenshot. Andre, one were online. Latitudes and longitudes. Okay, Alva, be cautious. Whenever you are going for differences, this mandatory one, distance or the definition, also called as the number followed by the length, followed by we call it as the distance, followed by we call it as what? We call it the most important one, followed by we call it as the uniqueness. Yes or no? Yes, latitudes, and we call it as longitudes. This is, we call it as, this is majorly, which part? This is majorly we call it as, it is the second theme called as the imaginary lines. Okay, Alva? Yes, 100% ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತಾ ಇವತ್ತೊಂದು? Yes, 100%? Yes. ನಾಳೆ ನೆನಪಿರುತ್ತಾ? Will you revise it and come again for tomorrow? Yes. Online, I hope it is clear. Yes. Okay, Alva. This is all for today. Thank you. See you all tomorrow. Now, tomorrow we'll be starting with respect to our theme 3 called as the motions, the rotation and revolution. Tomorrow we'll be seeing about the, we call it as seasons, all those things, after the revision of the last class. Okay, Alva. After this, we'll be starting with respect to our second chapter called as origin and evolution of Earth. Second chapter will be starting, we call it as origin and evolution of the Earth. Okay, Alva. Yes, this is all from our end, that is from our second class. Done. Thank you. See you all tomorrow. Yes. Thank you online. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Yes. Online, thank you.